Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Kaminsky. I'm BRIC's Director of Youth Education, and I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. This is our first annual Youth Curatorial Fellowship, and while the exhibition had been planned to be a live event in our gallery, I'm really glad that we can join together virtually to celebrate the hard work of our fellows and the work of the talented participating artists. Especially with everything going on in the world today, I just wanted to say that you all matter, your voices matter, and your work is important. In times like these, we need artists more than ever. As part of BRIC's mission to build Brooklyn's creative future, we're committed to creating opportunities for young people to gain new skills, explore careers, and develop their unique creative voices. This exhibition is unique because it was planned and organized by young people to be a platform for the work of other young people. I commend the extraordinary work of the fellows, especially under the unprecedented circumstances we find ourselves in. It says a lot about their character, that they remain committed, and their resiliency in moving to virtual meetings and a virtual exhibition. The participating artists have also shown great skills and creativity in producing the work that you'll see in the exhibition. These are powerful works. Each one asks important questions and shows a unique, authentic perspective on a topic that affects all New Yorkers. And with that, it's my pleasure to share this introduction from Christina Newman-Scott, BRIC's president. Christina has been a big cheerleader of this program, and it would not be possible without her support.
My name is Christina Newman-Scott, and I'm the president of BRIC. It is such an honor to be with you all here today. We have always been committed to investing in young people and ensuring that their stories are told on their terms. I'm really in awe of these young people going through this very challenging time for our world, but in particular for young people who've just been completely displaced and not able to connect with their friends. And I'm so proud to and really humbled to see the extraordinary work that they have produced. We're so excited to share it with you here today. And I think it's really important when young people look out for each other and when we look out for them and continue to give a platform in which their voices can be amplified.
Thank you for that message, Christina. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to celebrate the hard work that these young curators and artists have put in. I wanted to say a brief note about how unbelievably honored I have been to work with these curators for the past 8 months. We started this back in November, and the vision and the empathy and the willingness to question the systems that we live in has been nothing short of an inspiration to me. I also am particularly proud of their ability to pivot. This was meant to be a physical exhibition at BRIC House, and when COVID hit, they didn't miss a beat. They jumped right into the virtual realm and created an amazing exhibition. I'm sharing a link in the chat right now. We're going to be doing a tour of the show, but I highly encourage you to explore the exhibition in your own time. There's a lot of really amazing work in there. With that, I also would really like to thank the artists for participating. These young artists have created some truly amazing work. And I don't say that for them at their age. This is amazing work, period. It's powerful and it's smart. And once again, I'm honored to just be a part of this. So before we start the tour, I want to let everyone know that we're going to have an opportunity for a Q&A at the end. If you would like to submit a question, click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will tackle them then. Please also feel free to put notes into the chat to encourage the artists and the curators or to share your voice. In light of everything that's been going on and the ongoing systemic racism that the white supremacy in America and across the world has been allowing to continue, we also want to create a space at the end of this for people to discuss and speak out and also just talk about what's been going on. BRIC has also put together a resources list. If you're a person of color, a Black individual, I highly encourage you to review it. There are a lot of resources on there. If you're a white person and you're looking to help, there's resources for you as well. There are several places to donate, ways to make a difference if you're unable to donate, articles for you to read and educate yourself. I encourage you to review that, to take the time to learn about what's been going on and to take the responsibility of the ongoing issues onto your own shoulders and off the shoulders of young people like these who should not have to bear the brunt of this horrible legacy. On that note, and switching to a slightly more celebratory note, I want to hand it over to the young people to talk about their work because it is something to be proud of. And I am so proud of them. So tonight we're going to start the evening with Emily, who's going to talk to us a little bit.
Hi, my name's Emily, and like Sarah mentioned, I am one of the youth curators. I'm going to be introducing Manu's work, and the reason why this piece stood out so much, because not only is theirs media so unique, but it also brings a message that we could all relate to or at least understand. And with that being said, I'm going to let Manu speak more into depth.
Hi folks, so my name is Manu Sheikh, and I'm the artist who made the piece Is a Black Life Worth Less Than $2.75? And I was inspired by the actions by the police back in winter, where there's the video of the police officer pulling out a gun on an unarmed Black teen on the train for fare jumping. And police presence within train stations has been a reoccurring thing of creating of oppressing people as they try to just go about their day. And it was very heartbreaking to see this, how police officers are supposed to protect the public, but there they were endangering not just the person who jumped the trains who evaded the fare, but everyone on the train. And it also is the fact that this is not an offense that's worth losing your life over. And it also is inspired by those sorts of train ads that say, we'd rather you pay the $2.75 than pay the fine. But it's ultimately a ridiculous fine and crime, and those actions were unforgivable by the police.
Thank you, Manu. And thank you, Emily. Next, we're going to hear from Oscar.
Hi, my name is Oscar Martinez. I am one of the youth curators of this exhibition, and I will be introducing Orchid Sylvester. And with her artwork, she wanted to convey a message where there are many opportunities around you, yet it's not easy to access them all, some or few. Sometimes it's good to ponder on where you are now, because reflections on what you can influence and affect in your immediate environment can evolve into being able to influence beyond your circle. And with that, I would like to introduce Orchid Sylvester.
Hello, my name is Orchid Sylvester, and in my piece entitled Mates of State, I wanted to pay homage to the resources around me in the sense of public transportation. I rely primarily on buses, I rely primarily on trains, and even though those have limited reaches on their own, it's with my strife and with the strife of students like me who seek better opportunities outside of what they typically have, that we use public transportation as a vehicle for trying to better our lives, trying to enrich our lives. And it's like in the piece itself, I wanted to use bus tickets and bus fare as something that's sacrificed, in the sense of, even though this could be used for all sorts of things, I want to give it to what I want to do in life. So this would contribute to me later on. And it's a duality in my piece. It's a duality in how I feel, mainly because even though I do see a lot of positive when it comes to public transportation, it's a contrast to private public transit. I think of I think of planes, I think of cars, I think of taxis, I think of Ubers, those sort of things. And even though you have to pay for those as well, they're very limited. I made this piece at a time where last year I was a part of the Congressional Art Competition, and I had to fly to Washington, D.C. to see different pieces being showcased. And the year before, I had won a different competition that allowed me to go to San Antonio. And with all of those moments, I thought to myself, I wouldn't be here if there wasn't something that they saw in me. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have anything to quote unquote offer. And even though I like to see things in the positive as, yes, I worked hard to be here, at the same time, why should people have to diminish themselves and diminish their experience as, I must work hard, I must do this and that in order to feel as if I deserve to belong here? So it's an approach to how public transportation could be both a push towards good things, but it could also be censorship and what you could actually use and access. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Orchid. And thank you, Oscar. Now I'm going to pass the mic to Sabina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sabina. I am one of the curators that worked on putting the show together, and I would like to introduce the artist that I interviewed, Hunter. We chose Hunter's work because we felt that it provided a very unique view of the MTA, where it kind of highlights the darker side of the MTA and the injustices within the system. And it paints the MTA as a place that might give you heavy feelings like anxiety. And we also felt that Hunter's work was very personal and very emotional. And with that, I would like to let Hunter speak about it more.
Hello, my name is Hunter. It's interesting because even though we're all seeing each other digitally, I'm still nervous and my heart is beating as if I'm talking to a room of people, but I'm only in my room. But I've been nervous thinking of what to say or how to introduce the work. And I guess it's funny to think about how I submitted all these pieces in October or November, and how since then the country has kind of caught fire. And how, you know, for all of the artists exhibited and for my own body of work, like how much like the anxieties within it and the terror within the pieces reflect that embodiment of America and American culture, and what it means to have to own or disown like Black consciousness within that American context. I wanted to read a quote by Paul Gilroy just to quickly introduce what I'm going to talk about. He says, "Music and its attendant rituals provide the most important locations where the unspeakable and unwritable memory of terror is preserved as a social and cultural resource." And I wanted to use that quote because I was blown away at the thought or idea rather of unspeakable terror, and how central that is to diaspora aesthetics and cultural practices, more within myself and my own work, how, you know, within Black consciousness, the idea of this genetic terror or this, you know, this need, this necessity for survival and the need to thrive and live and get past challenges is like, it's almost like a cultural merit, which is confusing because although that terror is, it's, you know, it can be existentially dreadful, it can be hard to get past, and it can destroy you. It's also kind of like, you know, like look, like I got this, like, you know, I got all this like ability to survive, I guess, and like that's used as as something that's positive. So in these pieces, I directly use MTA material or quote unquote steal from the MTA. But most of these things I found in the street when no one wanted them. So then I made them mine. And something that's really important to me with these pieces is irony. And I think I'm so enamored and drawn, and I can't help but to depict irony in my work because of whiteness in itself. Like, I think that there's something to be said as understanding not only what my Blackness means to me, but also how Blackness is perceived onto me. And I think that's the space for irony, you know, like how ironic it is, for example, like this piece is called Nigga Boy, you know, like how if I look at myself like that, it's like, it's almost destructive. And in the same sense, like I can feel those two words depicted onto me every time I'm in the street. So I'm very much interested in irony. I think I'm only so attracted to irony because of whiteness. And yeah, my influences are mostly like music, musical, like mostly local artists like Mike or Standing on the Corner, or you know, superstars as big as Kendrick Lamar, things like that. And we need to hear from people like that now. And most definitely Basquiat. You know, I often like flirt and romance with the idea of Basquiat and his legacy, and how, you know, what that means for it to be kind of defamed by a white art culture. Yeah, I think that's mostly it.
Thank you, Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Sabina. So now we're going to hear from Cameron.
Hello, my name is Cameron Burns, and I'll be discussing about Kyra's work a little bit. So basically, her inspiration comes from the photographer Gunnar Stahl, and she mostly focuses on the medium film because it forces her to basically not overthink her work. And I would like to let Kyra say a few words.
Hi. Okay, so for the pieces that I have in the exhibit, I have one collage and I have one 35mm film photo. And I use some materials from the MTA as a basis, and I added different materials from like multiple different sources. Like I used a strip of film, I had sheet music on it, I had a magazine clipping on it, and I kind of wanted to represent in one place all the different kinds of people who take the MTA on a daily basis. To workers, it can also kind of be a place where it spreads more awareness, more education in some sense. Like, despite the fact that there is obviously still ignorance in New York City and all over, it can show people other kinds of people that don't exactly look like them from other parts of New York City that they wouldn't generally be able to travel to, especially if you compare it to a more suburban kind of state, mostly focus on using like cars as their transportation, if they'll give you the opportunity to look at all these different kinds of people. So I think that it can kind of can have multiple purposes in that sense. And as for the film photo, I think it kind of contrasts the complexity and the diversity of the MTA riders. And I feel like a film photo can kind of equate to a lack of stress about my work, like Cameron mentioned. I think like I just capture what's in front of me and I don't really give it a second thought after the photo is taken because I can't see it. So it kind of relieves some of the pressure that I can put on myself and a lot of other people, a lot of other artists experience.
Thank you, Kyra. And thank you, Cam. I'm going to speak a little bit about another one of the artists who unfortunately wasn't able to join us tonight. Angel Melgar submitted a work, and in a similar manner to a few of the other artists, they brought in aspects of the MTA into their practice. You can see bits and pieces of posters. You can see drawings, like on the lower end, you'll see a figure jumping a turnstile. And they also definitely bring in the realm of graffiti. A lot of those symbols that you see, the artistic expression on the streets of New York, as well as many other cities. And, you know, I think in a particularly relevant note, they put a piece of birchwood on top of the collage where they drew a police officer and graffitied devil horns on top of it. While I think there's a bit of levity within that particular gesture, it also speaks to the racism within the police force and the fact that these people threaten and take the lives of people of color without any impediment. Another very powerful work, and we're very glad that Angel was able to be a part of the show. So next, I would like to introduce Angelica.
Hi, my name is Angelica Cecilio, and I had the great honor to work with Asobek Akmalov, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, so I will be the one talking on his behalf about his work. Asobek's artwork is a strong representation of the MTA, as you can see. He uses oil on big canvases, and his paintings shows more of the positive side of the MTA instead of the negative. It illustrates the diverse community that the MTA has, like Kyra had mentioned, and he focuses on more of the realistic portraits of the people who are taking the trains or the buses. The MTA kind of like ties the community together, considering that there's a diverse group of people riding it every day, which relates it back to our theme, the theme of our exhibition, which is MTA, make it accessible. Back to Sarah.
Thank you, Angelica, for talking to us about Asobek's work. So I'd also like to speak a little bit about Jose's work before I introduce him. Jose directly used MTA cards. It's a really interesting usage, both with the size. If we were looking at this in person, it would really encourage you and expect you to look up close to it. In the virtual exhibition, you'll notice that we place them in the center of the space in what we're calling a gesture of the subway. We created something that looks similar to a subway car. But his utilization of the branding of the MTA, drawing over it to highlight his message, just adds all the more power to it. So I'd like to hand the mic off to Jose Gonzalez to speak about his work.
Hello, Jose Gonzalez, and in my piece, I use Metro cards. I use both sides of them, and as you know, students get different Metro cards than the regular ones people use every day. But I use a student Metro card to show that some students get punished for some of the MTA's work. You know that every day sometimes it's a delay because of garbage that's in the tracks and all that. But at the end of the day, the students pay for that. And I crossed out in to write at the bottom, it says, it was all about the money, because that's what it seems that the MTA is all about. Most of the time there's delays and people keep on getting paid for it to fix it, but they don't do a good job. And then it just keeps on hurting everyone else that uses. I go through this every day. I live all the way at the end of the 7 line. and going to school in the middle of the city is hard. I've been getting every month delays on my report card and all that. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jose. So the final piece in our exhibition is a documentary video that was submitted to us by the Educational Video Center Youth Documentary Workshop. I'm not sure if any of the young people who made this film were able to join us today, but I do hope so. We're going to be screening a portion of the film, and it is a very powerful film where they ask specific questions on the systemic issues within the organization. They focused on racism, but they also speak about classism, ableism, and sexism. We were unable to show the full video due to time constraints, but the full video is embedded within the virtual exhibition, so I encourage you to watch the whole thing. It is a very well done and very educational video. So without further ado, I'd like to start the screening of the portion of the video.
I never felt anything like it before. I'm in my own.
I think you know who I am.
The Nicaraguan people we met hated the Contras for all the pain and suffering they had caused them.
And since there's no hot water, that he had to boil some.
I'm 23, and now I've decided to enlist in the United States Army.
You stay here, he's not going to make it.
Out of the whole world, which city's transit system is like the worst on time on record?
Do you know the answer, but you're quizzing me?
Answer, yeah.
It's probably the New York City subway.
New York City is the richest city in the richest country in the world. And we have one of the most subpar operating subways in the world.
Do you find the MTA reliable?
It's reliable because I know it's going to be delayed.
Experience with MTA. As of the last 5 years or so, it's gotten progressively worse. It's too many people, not enough trains, there's always delays, and we're always getting to work late, which causes some of us to lose our jobs. And I'm tired of being squished, and I'm tired of delays, and I'm tired of the train breaking. Yeah, that's about it.
Governor Cuomo says he's also had enough. He declared a state of emergency at the MTA, saying the whole system is decaying rapidly.
The current state of decline is wholly unacceptable.
A year and a half after the governor declared a state of emergency, the MTA is still in trouble. We had a couple of questions before making this documentary. How did the trains get so bad? And who's responsible?
Watch the city go by. All this motion is controlled by more than 13,000 signals. You've seen them. The red lights, the poles passing as the subway gets us from here to there.
According to the New York Times, the subway signal system identifies where the trains are and uses this information to control when trains can move down the tracks.
The MTA needs to prioritize upgrading the signaling system. It is still running on the same 100-year-old signaling system is kind of the reason why we experience so many delays every day.
New York City subway signals are so outdated that they can't precisely identify the locations of the trains. So, trains need more room between them to avoid crashing into each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, to maintain even spacing of trains, this train will be held in the station momentarily.
More room between trains means we have to wait longer to catch the next train. And when the outdated signals fail, the train stops entirely and creates even more delays. Other cities use a new high-tech signal system called CBTC. Only 2 New York City trains use this new system, the 7 and the L.
Well, I used to be a conductor, yes. Customers don't like to hear delay announcements or anything wrong. They come right to us like we the ones that caused the problem, or we did something to them. It's not our fault for the delays, but people do. They're gonna see us in uniform. We work for MTA, so they're gonna come and attack us or verbally abuse us or anything.
The person who should be held accountable for the state of New York City subways is the person who is in charge of it, which is essentially Governor Cuomo. Although he has stated that MTA is not his responsibility, it 100% is.
The governor has been in control for the last 8 years, and he certainly deserves a share of the blame because he decided to do cosmetic things instead of fixing actual service.
The 2nd Avenue subway opens to riders this Sunday at noon, but I managed to get an exclusive look at it with the guy who finally helped make it happen, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
It's very open. It should give you that sense of space. You're not claustrophobic.
Lots of art. Why was that so important?
Even if a child never walks into a museum, just their daily experiences.
Despite needing to update the signals, many people criticize the MTA for spending money on the wrong things. In addition to Wi-Fi touchscreens and digital displays, the MTA has spent billions on more expensive projects that don't improve the subway system. According to Vox, the 2nd Avenue subway costs $4.45 billion for 2 miles of track. It's the most expensive subway in the world, and it only benefits 4 stops. According to the New York Post, the Fulton stop costs $1.4 billion for just 1 subway station. Why do these stations exist? Well, the 2nd Avenue stations are in the wealthy spots in the Upper East Side. The Fulton station is in the wealthy financial district. A day before we recorded this, the L train shutdown was cancelled, but work continued on the Bedford Avenue station in heavily gentrified Williamsburg. While the Bedford Avenue stop on the L is being upgraded with digital displays, elevators, and safer platforms, the same cannot be said about stations further down off the L line. As fare increase, so does the number of people jumping the turnstile. According to AM New York, the MTA reports that 208,000 subway riders jump the turnstile each day. They say that cost them $215 million this year. In December 2018, the MTA vowed to crack down on people who don't pay the fare. The way the police responds to this problem exposes racial discrimination.
As you get out further from the city center into poorer neighborhoods of color, you'll find that not only is the service worse, but it's also infested with police, right? Who are waiting to catch fare evaders and then throw them in prison for basically not being able to afford a fare that nobody should be paying anyway, as far as I'm concerned.
According to the Community Service Society, in the first 3 months of 2017, 90% of people arrested for jumping the turnstile were Black or Hispanic.
For whatever reason, we decided that we weren't going to pay. And as we sort of come around and come out, 2 cops come right up to us and nab us. And we talked to them, and I think they saw how sort of depleted we were and sad that they ended up letting us go, which was really nice because it's like a $70 fine, I think.
How are you trying to tell our brothers and sisters you're going to pay more when you're not getting what you should have right now? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in any aspect.
On December 10, 2018, the MTA held another public hearing in Brooklyn.
Growing up, I never paid attention to the MTA and what they did. Money wasn't a worry to me because I didn't have to pay the fare. Since I've been alive, which is not that long, the fare has been raised 4 times. As I started having more knowledge over the years, I noticed how the raise was affecting not only my mom as a single parent, but also everybody struggling with money. You say that the fare increase will improve the service, but watch nothing change, and in a couple years you'll be asking for more money. You guys probably don't care about what a 16-year-old has to say or any young person, and you aren't worried about what the people have to say because regardless of the hearing, you'll still raise prices. And all of you will never understand the struggle that we go through as students and workers on the MTA buses and trains. Some people lose their jobs, and students lose class time because of the delays, but we don't get that time back. I doubt that you use the MTA service yourselves because these issues would have been already resolved a long time ago. Start with the train service signals and elevator access for disabled people. Get your stuff together and show us that you're going to use our money to better the crappy service that we get. Las personas ahí del MTA se notaba que a ellos no le importaba nada que decían la gente porque usted los podían ver en el teléfono. At the speech, the MTA board members weren't really paying attention. They were on their electronic devices. I can tell that they're not going to change anything. And even though like they did the hearing, they're not, I feel like they're still going to raise the prices or do whatever they want. Here is where we should state that the MTA does have plans to fix the issues we've been discussing.
This past year, Andy Byford, the MTA president, proposed a fast forward plan. And so that's the most progressive plan that we had on the table.
Byford was hired to shake up the tired old system. He crafted a grand modernization plan that calls for hundreds of station renovations, thousands of new subway cars, and more state-of-the-art computer signal controls that can run trains faster and more frequently.
These are all very good things. The challenge for MTA is getting this funded. Any improvements to our system will cost a lot of money.
The Fast Forward program will cost $30 billion, and no one knows where that money will come from. Understanding that the price of a MetroCard is becoming too expensive for some New Yorkers, the city government passed the Fair Fares program.
So Fair Fares is a subsidy for discounted MetroCards for low-income New Yorkers. And so that's any single individual who is falling below the poverty line, so the federal poverty line of $12,500 annually.
The MTA and Governor Cuomo won't answer our questions, but we're still going to ask. Will the MTA partner with services that can help the homeless after they are thrown out of the train?
What can be done to prevent sexual harassment on the train? Where will the money come to fund Fast Forward? Will the Broadway Junction stop continue to be ignored now that the L train shutdown is canceled? Did the shutdown even need to happen, or was it a way to give money to construction companies that fund the governor's campaign? Was the L train shutdown canceled because you wanted to take attention away from the fact that the MetroCard fare is going up?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are being held momentarily by the train's dispatcher. Thank you for your patience. Ladies and gentlemen, because of construction, this train is being held momentarily. We apologize for any inconvenience.
Okay, thank you all for watching. As everyone's saying in the comments, it is truly an amazing video, and they bring up so many good points, especially now that I believe the MTA is talking about raising their fares yet again. So now I'd like to move us into the question and answer section. So if you have any questions you would like to pose at the curators, to the artists, I encourage you to put it into the Q&A. You'll notice it's at the bottom of your screen. You can also put your question into the chat. And if you would like to speak verbally, there is a raise hand option on your screen. If you raise your hand, we will unmute you and you will be able to speak. So, any questions? I do love all the love in the chat. All right, so, oh, wait, we have a question, wonderful. So from Tamra Plotnick, curators, how did you select the artist and artworks? And Desi R, I see your raised hand. We will get to you after Tamra. So for how to select the artists and artworks, turn that over to the curators. Who would like to speak first? How about Sabina? Sabina, would you like to tell us a little bit about the process?
Sure. So basically, we created an open call for the artists, and we announced it online and everywhere we could. Like each of the curators, announced it like on their platforms and to everyone they know. And then once the open call time like ended and we got all the works, we looked through them all together, and we just discussed each of the artworks, what we liked about it, and whether we would like to have it in the show. And that's how we selected the works.
Thank you, Sabina. So Desi R, I see that you had your hand raised. Marcus, are we able to invite Desi to speak? All right, Desi, you should be either unmuted or able to unmute. All right, so I think there may be a technical difficulty, so we're going to move on to some of the Q&As, but hopefully we'll be able to hear from Desi again soon. So the next question is from Allie Olson. Did each curator choose their own artist? That is a very good question. I am going to turn that over to Cameron. Cameron, will you tell us a little bit about whether or not it was an individual selection or a group selection?
So basically, we would get the forms sent to us, and we would, as a group, go through each and every artwork, and we would see if it fit our theme or if it didn't fit our theme, and we would selectively rate how we liked, like whether the artwork fit our theme and fit what we were trying to send as a message. And then we would personally go through it all, and that's how we basically chose the artwork.
Thank you, Cam. Okay, so we did get a question from Desi R. What do you envision the next step to be with this in regard to transit affordability? So I'm not sure I'm personally the best person to answer this question, and unfortunately we don't have anyone from the documentary crew within the panelists at this point. If any of the artists or fellows would like to take a crack at this though, I open it up to you. Give a few seconds. Well, I think with the video, Desi, if you go to the web page and you go to the bottom where the video is embedded, in the Educational Video Center Youth Documentary Workshop, there's a link to their web page, and you can contact them directly. They're a really wonderful group doing really great work within the city. So the next question from an anonymous attendee. I noticed that many of you chose the MTA as your theme. Since Andy Byford quit the MTA, how I feel the system is just going to get bad again, if not worse. My question is, how does that make you feel as artists? It's a good question. I'm going to turn that over to the artists then. Would any of you like to tackle that question?
I would like to answer this. I'm just going to quickly reread it so that I can jog down thoughts. Question is, how does that? I mean, I don't want to sound like gloom and doomy, but I don't think, even with the FTP protests that happened in the fall and the ones that ensued in the winter, I don't think the situation for me personally ever felt like it was going to get better. I think what mattered in those situations was voicing the views of the people, especially the people who were getting arrested and ticketed unfairly. And it's just kind of like watching that video is crazy to think that 90% of the people who are arrested, who are ticketed, are Hispanic or Black. And like in some way, shape or form, I exist within those statistics, you know, like it's kind of crazy to think. And I feel in some way like your question pertains to all the protests that are happening right now, because I don't think that the MTA protests that happened in New York, all, you know, like this year or last year, are very much so different than the protests that are happening now. I think right now it's very charged to a specific event. However, I feel like this is just an unresting American / New York conversation that's been waiting to happen for years, for decades, since, you know, legislation like the MTA's constant increase of fares it just reinforces the idea that they refuse to listen or to want to change things or to like be more revolutionary in their ideas. So, but be hopeful or hop the fare. I don't know. Do what you need to do to survive.
Thank you, Hunter. All right, so we got a follow-up question from Allie Olson, thanking Sabina for her response and asking who chose the theme. So Emily, why don't you answer that one for us?
All right, so we chose the theme as a group. We all just kind of brainstormed throughout ideas, and just basically topics that we thought were important and that had an impact and that were relatable to everyone. And just one that we all agree on was the MTA, because that was around the time where there was that kind of protest where everyone was hopping the turn signals, and we found it really inspiring. So we wanted to, you know, just give it more attention. Yeah.
Thank you, Emily. All right, now we have a question from Jose. How did the pandemic impact the development of the show? And congratulations to all. So thank you, Jose, for that. Oscar, can you answer this question for us?
Sure. So we started planning this exhibition back in, I think, late or early October, November. And we thought it was going to be a physical exhibition in the brick building. But around February and March, when the whole pandemic started and people had to quarantine, we had to think of an idea to do the exhibition without anyone catching the virus. So we had to do it virtually.
Thank you for that, Oscar. All right, so from another anonymous attendee, artists and curators, did seeing the works of others inspire you to create more art, and how so? So I know a lot of our curators are also artists in their own right. So I want to open this up to the floor. Would anyone like to answer this question?
Yeah. I feel what inspired me for this piece was definitely, as I said, seeing the actual train ads in the station and almost the MTA's response and their actions towards what's already happening. They are aware that we people of color and Black people are frustrated with the amount of fare raising of fares, but instead of doing anything to help, they really just are trying to make a joke of it, where it's like, well, we'd rather you pay the $275 than a fine. And it's just one of those things where it's like, can you really trivialize these things when you are specifically targeting people of color and lower class individuals? So I think just day-to-day life tends to be a big inspiration for me. And just also with the use of Metro cards, I was inspired by the fact that, like, Metro cards, how we use them once or we use them till they expire, and then, you know, people just throw them away. Like 100% of the Metro cards that I used in this piece, I just picked up off the ground, because once it's done, they just get rid of it.
Okay, so when it comes to me making, I don't know if when you refer to works, you refer to the piece that I submitted for this or just my work in general. But when it comes to this, I actually took a lot of inspiration from my art teachers. There's some that I've had over and over for the past couple of years, but the main reason why I took inspiration to use their artistic practice into this piece, as I had a teacher in freshman year who used collage. I had a teacher in sophomore year who was really into making commentary on what people use, especially minorities who are often so reliant on using these things, yet they are so penalized against it for using. And with that, the main reason why I did it is because not only do I want to integrate aspects of themselves, aspects of their wisdom into the work that I'm trying to create and the wisdom I'm trying to share with other people who look at my work, I do it so that it's more of a connection. Even though we see, I would say, professionals, we think that they're well sorted out, and I think that there's, well, not that I think it, but I find that people tend to connect having a car with having your life sorted or relying on the bus and public transportation as not having the things that you need. So I often see a lot of teachers use, I often see teachers use buses. I often see teachers use trains. Like, and even when I'm on the bus on my way to school, I see teachers get off with me and walk up with me and we'd have a conversation. So it's more so like this is a continuation of the legacy and the practices and the thoughts and emotions of the people in my life who really matter to me.
Thank you, Orchid and Manu, for those great responses. Would anyone else like to add to that before we move on to the next question? Oh, Sabina, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that as a curator and somebody that got to see all of the works that we received for the open call, it really inspired me, maybe not necessarily to create like MTA related art, but in general, just to create more and to notice more, and just whenever I created a work, to just think deeper about its meaning, I guess, and just like put more into it.
Thank you, Sabina.
I would also like to say something.
Great.
So as artists, because I'm also an artist, it's a lot, we get our inspiration from current events and things that we're passionate about, and we've as a curator, we all felt that the MTA was a very important subject to a more recent, because as kids we do ride the trains a lot because it's the only way we can get from home to school. And I feel as though, well, I was mostly inspired by a lot of this work because you don't see that much about what happens in the MTA, what happens in the trains, because not many people talk about it or show about it. And it's important for us as artists to spread that awareness. And I feel like art is a way to express yourself and show your awareness to other people. So yeah.
Thank you for adding that, Cam. Does anybody else want to jump on before we move on? Okay, great. So we're approaching 6 o'clock. We're going to answer one or two more questions. So the next one up is from Natalie McCann, who has a question for the artist who created collages that incorporated found objects. And I believe she's referring to Hunter. She wants to know if you can say more about your palette. She was really struck by your use of primary colors. So Hunter.
I'm trying to understand like the use of palette, because illustration is a very new approach to the medium for me. Like I go to school for photography, so I kind of found these objects very fascinating, and I basically had been hoarding them in my room for a long time, and I decided to, I went to this place called Scrapyard in Canal Street and just got a red marker, and I was like, oh, I like the color red. And then I began tagging on the subway with the red marker. And I think somehow like that need to put my voice onto the street onto like materials in the subway, like physically embedded itself in finding things from the street and New York and the subway, like items I could bring back home with me and writing on those. So I think in terms of the color palette and what's available on those, half of it has to do with the collaboration I'm using and manifesting with the MTA's surfaces, and the other half is simply, you know, it's more like a necessity. Like, these are the colors that were available to me, so these are the colors that I am allowing myself to use. Obviously some things are intentional, like red is very important to me. I don't know exactly why, but I think a lot of it has very much to do with like passion and heat and anger and rage, which are things that are all very much integral to the work. And then gold is important to me, and silver, because it kind of, especially when it comes to Blackness, because I think it's often used in like pop culture to like make Blackness look kind of pretty. You know, you wear gold chains, or like you have gold. I think there's a fascination with the material object and how that object then objectifies like a Black life in itself in some capacity, in some form of culture. Yeah, that's what I can say.
Thank you, Hunter. So we are running low on time. I want to sort of sum up the last couple of questions, but before we move on, I want to ask any of the other artists if they want to touch upon their own usage of color, because I personally was also struck by how colorful this exhibition is. Does anybody else want to speak to that?
May I?
Please.
All right. Okay, so in my piece, I was looking at the colors as Hunter was answering the question. And I did notice that I did have a lot of primary colors. And the reason for that is mainly because I wanted it to almost feel hazy, even though I rely so heavily on public transportation. It's something I've realized in retrospect that I don't really remember much of. Like, I remember getting ready for school. I remember talking to family as I'm waiting for the bus. I remember some things about the trip, but it's not anything important. And I remember school. I remember just waiting for the bus, and then I'm home, and then that sort of thing. But now that this whole quarantine thing and social distancing is going on, I'm realizing more and more that I actually remember my bus rides more than I realized I have. And it's not necessarily disturbing, but it's more of like an enchanting quality, like something that's so mundane, something that's typically just routine. There's something, I would say, fantastical about it. Like, you meet different aspects of life, you experience the same thing over and over, but there's a certain charm to it, and seeing new things and something fresh and something so repetitive.
Thank you, Orchid. Before we move on to the final question, does anyone else want to speak about their color usage? Okay, so just to touch on a few remaining things, is anyone going to propose this to the MTA Museum? That's a solid point. I definitely, Brick has a contact there, so I may spread the word a bit. And then the last two questions before the new third one both sort of touch upon similar topics, so I'm going to group them together. One from Donald Burns, one from an anonymous attendee, talking about challenges. So Donald specifically asked about challenges with going viral, and the anonymous attendee asked about challenges while planning the exhibition. So this is directed at the curators. And I'd like to open it up to see if any of the curators would like to discuss this. Okay, so I'm going to quickly answer it, and if anyone wants to interrupt me, I encourage them to do so. I also realized I never actually introduced myself. My name is Sarah Simpson. I was the teaching curator. I had the huge privilege of teaching these young people about the curatorial process, about putting on an exhibition, and guiding them through this. But I do see that one of our curators, Oscar, would like to touch upon this subject. So Oscar, please take it away.
One of the challenges we faced going virtual was how last minute it was. We were planning it for like about 5 months, and we all anticipated it to be a physical exhibition. And when the pandemic hit, we had like a time crunch on how to do it virtually. And I think Sarah and Beto handled it amazingly, doing it virtually. And it was difficult because we had like 2 or 3 months left and we didn't know what to do, but I think we all handled it very well.
I would fully agree with that, Oscar. I was so impressed by how well you guys handled it and for your continued interest in the subject. It's been a hard couple of months for everybody. Would any of the other curators like to speak?
Oh, come on. I would like to explain a little bit. I guess I think we were all slightly upset that we couldn't have a physical exhibition. But I think the thing that really made it easier is the fact that like no one really stopped attending our meetings, or we all just continued as if nothing really happened. Like we all stayed focused on the topic, and we just all we were all really passionate about this since the beginning, and you know that like interest never stopped. So
thank you for adding that, Emily. All right, anybody else would you like to speak before we finish up tonight? All right, well, thank you again to all the curators and artists for participating. Thank you to all the attendees for taking time out of your day to join us. I encourage you, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to put it back into the channel to check out the virtual exhibition. It's going to be live on BRIC's site for the foreseeable future, if not forever. And there you can interact with the installation. In the installation shots, you'll see yellow beacons, which will give you more information on the piece. You can watch both Hunter's video and the Educational Video Center's video. You can zoom in on the works, which is a really unique opportunity to the virtual realm. There's also a catalog that the artists and the curators worked very hard on, which includes interviews with all of the artists, which you can download on that page. So thank you again. Everybody be well, be safe, take care of yourselves, and remember to love each other. Thank you.